Language and the brain poses an area of interest whereby we try to comprehend how our brain processes the many linguistic messages that we hear, internalize, and produce. Early studies focused more on locating specific areas of the brain involved in language. However, it has now broadened to discovering how, for example, our brain organizes our phonological and lexical information, causes mistakes in speech and hearing, and even language disorders. Slips of the ear are misperceptions of intended speech signal. Consider the auditory relatives of slips of the tongue. Slips of the ear happen when there is a mistake in hearing or listening a certain word or phrase because of similar sounding ones, typically due to the difference between what we expect to hear and what is actually said. What makes slips of the ear extremely intriguing is how it relates to our theme of language and the brain. It may give hints to how our brain perceives and makes sense of received auditory signals. When our ear catches a messy jumble of noises, how does the brain proceed to process it into possible comprehensible forms, or perhaps not at all? Which parts of the brain are responsible for this task? And so on and so forth. A study on neuroimaging recorded in the Neuroscience journal states that research on this particular phenomenon provides us with more information on how our brain creates perpetual illusions in certain situations when speech is degraded. In fact, using functional MRI, the study shows that such circumstances causes reduced activity in the left superior temporal sulcus, a brain region crucial for speech sounds. Now, allow me to give you an example. In 1981, Michael Parkinson interviewed the great boxer Muhammad Ali on his chat show. In one of his segments, Sir Michael posed a question to Ali regarding his safety, considering his position in public.
But I mean, you're a public figure, and you're one of those public figures who...
Did you say nigga?
No, I said a public figure.
I thought you...
As shown from the clip, the word figure got misperceived as the syllable word mentioned. We can make a few smart guesses and explanations. Consider the syllable count and overall phonological structure of the two words. They both have two syllables and the same last syllable, ger. In the first syllable of both words, the nucleus are also the same, which is short vowel E. The only error that seems to be in Ali's interpretation is the substitution of the onset or consonant f to n. Recalling our earlier description, in speech-degraded situations, our brain tries to figure out a phonological structure with the closest accuracy to the sound our ear catches. The part of the brain is known as the Wernicke's area. Now, based on the localization view, a processed phrase was then transferred via his arcuate fasciculus, proceeding to Broca's area, where a form of the spoken phrase, which is the slow word, is generated. Bearing in mind that our brain does so based on our lexical knowledge along with contextual experiences, it is possible that the phrase figure in public figure got misheard as the slow word because both are nouns pointing to a specific person or individual. As a black person, it would have been intelligible for Ali to be wary of such slurs that were meant to point offensively at members of the black community. Fortunately for Sir Michael, Ali made sure to clear up the misunderstanding before acting on the misperceived statement.
That's right.
Oh, I thought... Oh, phew. I'm sorry to hit you, man.
And now, I would like to explain about my concept of choice, which is the tip of the tongue. So, what is the tip of the tongue, you may ask? So, the tip of the tongue is also known as lithological, is the phenomenon of failing to retrieve a word or term from memory combined with partial recall, and the feeling of retrieval is imminent. According to John Field, the founder of BAL Psycholinguistic Group, the tip of the tongue, it refers to the experience of knowing a word but being unable to produce it at the moment. The tip of the tongue phenomenon is explained by examining the cognitive process involved in word retrieval. According to the spreading activation theory, the word in our mental lexicon, our mental dictionary of words, are interconnected by semantic, phonological, and orthographic links. When we try to retrieve a specific word, the activation spreads towards the network until it reaches the target word, at which point we are able to recall the word. However, in the case of the tip of the tongue, the activation may get stuck or blocked along the way, creating a sense of frustration and difficulties in recalling the word, possibly due to interference from other competing words, incomplete or ambiguous word cues, or insufficient strength of the connection between the target word and other linked word. Linguistic research on the tip of the tongue phenomenon has identified various of factors that can influence the likelihood of experiencing this phenomenon, including word frequency, phonological similarities, and age-related declines in memory performance. One of the most famous examples of the tip of the tongue phenomenon is on an American television series called Friends. In episode 12 of season 4, the one with the embryos,
what is Chandler Bing's job?
Oh gosh, this has something to do with numbers and processing. Well, he carries a briefcase.
10 seconds, you need this or you lose the game.
It has something to do with transponding. Oh, he's a transmonster.
the tip of the tongue here occurs as the character Rose, who is under a great deal of stress, experiencing more of this phenomenon than usual, indicating their cognitive overload. Word retrieval failure occurs when the brain is unable to retrieve a word from its lexical store despite knowing the concept or meaning associated with the word. This can happen due to a variety of factors such as stress, fatigue, distraction, or simply because the word is not being used frequently enough and therefore was not well maintained in the brain's lexicon. And that is all from me. Thank you for watching my part of the video.
What is the definition of bilingualism? As stated by Ainuddin in her 2021 work, bilingualism means having the ability to communicate in two languages. For instance, one could converse in Malay and English. A person could become bilingual because they are raised in a dual language household or because they learn a second language later in life. Next, the relationship between bilingualism and language and the brain is that the brain uses a shared mechanism for combining words from a single language and words from two different languages that has been discovered by a team of neuroscientists. Its results show that language switching is natural for bilingual people because the brain has a mechanism that prevents language switching from being noticed, enabling a seamless transition while understanding multiple languages at once. Sarah Phillips, a New York University doctoral candidate and the lead author of the paper, explains our brains are capable of engaging in multiple languages, which appears in the Grinnell Uniero. Languages may differ in what sounds they use and how they organize words to form sentences. However, all languages involve the process of combining words to express complex thoughts. Next, Lena Cannon, a professor in NYU's Department of Linguistics and Department of Psychology, also adds bilingualists show a fascinating version of this process. Their brains readily combine words from different languages together, much like when combining words from the same language. Actress Kim Namjoon, or popularly known as RM from BTS, a Korean artist, as one of the bilingual artists that I know. So here's a video example.
So I made that word.
Okay.
There's no such word called 들꽃놀이. When you say a fireworks, it's called 불꽃놀이 in Korean.
Yeah.
But when you say like flower works, it's called 들꽃놀이.
Kim Namjoon was born and raised in Korea with both of his parents being from Korea. He shares that one of the methods he used to teach himself how to speak English by watching an American television sitcom called Friends, as stated in one of his interviews. Watching Friends have helped him improve his English and combined with other daily self-taught, he is now able to speak English fluently to help represent and be the spokesperson of his group BTS every time they went abroad. As we can see in the video shown before, Kim Namjoon frequently combines both languages when speaking with others, raising concerns about how a bilingualist brain possesses such interactions. Phillips and Cannon investigated whether bilinguals read these mixed languages expressions using the same mechanisms as when understanding a single language expressions, or alternatively, if doing so requires the brain to use other systems. It resulted on those Korean/English bilinguals explicitly used the same neural process as they did while deciphering expressions in a single language.
The tip of the tongue is a type of speech error that occurs when the speaker's actual utterance is different from the deliberate speech, and it most commonly happens in the in any conversation. Tongue slips also could be when the sound or grit is produced in the wrong place. For example, constipation is mistakenly pronounced as constipation. So, recent researchers have found how our brain tends to translate thoughts into words, and speech error can happen when we are intrigued and mixed up with words that are recently thought, heard, read, or said. So, words, sounds, and concepts are interrelated in three networks in the brain, which are the phonological, semantic, and lexical. But most often, the networks which operate through a mechanism called spreading activation trip over each other that resulting in the slip of the tongue. A language production system that is tending to make error permits novel production of words to happen. According to Daniel Wenner, a psychologist at Harvard, the unconscious has a role in slips of the tongue, and that the more the prefrontal cortex, which is the conscious mind, wants to reject thought, it's more likely the unconscious mind must ensure we're not thinking it. But then, the very thought that we try to suppress pops into our minds, which often leads to verbalizing it and becoming a slip of the tongue. So one of the real-world examples of tongue slip happens in American sitcom television series named Parks and Recreation, Season 2 in Episode 9, whereby one of the characters named Jerry says line, "From my urinal, I was inspired by the death of my grandma."
Jerry.
From my urinal, I was inspired by the death of my grandma.
You said urinal.
So from his line, it is recognizable that Jerry has made an unintentional speech error, which is a tongue slip, because he accidentally spoke mural when he meant to say mural art painting. So in that television sitcom series, though it was deliberately scripted, a character named Jerry has made a simple yet clear real-world example of a tongue slip in his line. Thus, we're able to see how the intended word, which is mural, was mispronounced and was replaced with mural, as these two words produce similar beginning and ending sounds, although mural is not even considered as a word. It happens due to a language production system that is more likely to make error, which allows for producing or coining new word that doesn't even exist, just like in the scenario, mural. Besides, it is in Jerry's brain that the word mural has been mixed up with other multiple words that have closely similar phonology, and it may be that the word mural is one of them. The word mural later on forms into a thought in Jerry's brain, and it leads to him slipping into saying it. This process is due to the network that occurs in his brain, which operates through a mechanism known as spreading activation that trips over each other, and resulting in him saying the word mural as an instance of slip of the tongue.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Imaanul Husna from section 735, and the concept of my choice today is feral child. And first, I will be defining this concept. According to the Encyclopedia of Britannica, feral child are children who experience little to no human contact during their upbringing, either as a result of deliberate or accidental isolation. These children are often perceived as inhabiting a boundary zone between humans and animal existence. In a more broader sense, this term refers to a 4 distinct subgroups of atypically rare children. The cases of feral children provide compelling evidence in support of the critical age hypothesis, which asserts that the ability to acquire language is limited to the pre-pubertal years. Subsequently, most probably as a result of maturational processes in the brain, humans lose this ability. With the existence of this evidence, it can be concluded that without the exposure of language in the early years of life, as those that happen to the feral children, humans may lose the ability to acquire language, particularly in the grammatical aspects. The importance of exposure to language during this period is due to a few key factors in brain development, all of which are crucial to the acquisition and organization of language knowledge, as well as the development of language-specific brain areas. And now I will be talking about one of the earliest scientifically recorded cases, being Victor of Avon, a 12-year-old boy found in Avon, France in 1800. Following his discovery, Victor was transferred from the National Institute of Deaf Mutes to the care of J.M. Casper Victor, a renowned physician and educator. Over the course of 5 years under Ita's care, Victor goes through numerous training and trials in an effort to enable him to understand and use language. Victor gradually learns to write first by imitating, then by memories. He also consistently improved in establishing connection between words and its meaning, and even distinguishing similar items like razor and knife. However, although Victor attained an understanding of language, he was never able to communicate through speech or comprehend spoken language. The incapabilities of Victor to speak and comprehend all speech is due to having no exposure to language during his critical period. Without the exposure to language, neural connections in the brain that involves language are eliminated through the process of synaptic pruning. Furthermore, since there is no language input throughout the period in which the brain exhibits a high degree of neuroplasticity, his language-specific brain areas did not undergo rapid development and specialization, hence disabling efficient language production and processing.